if we want to do this well and we want to train for the long game, then we have to figure out how it is that we can sail straight into the cultural prevailing winds that is telling us, and trying to shape us and making us train for the short game, for that which is fleeting rather than for that which is lasting. So, how do we prepare for the long game? I want to just briefly suggest 4 principles that can help all of us, whether you're seminary students or what have you, prepare for the long game, which is ultimately a lifetime of service to the church through your scholarship, research, and writing. First, I want to encourage you to ignore the culture's timetables, completely throw them out. Throw out perceived timetables and benchmarks. I think we have to step out of the microwave culture where you can cook something and you might have a piece of food that has molten lava edges with a block of ice in the middle, and instead think in terms of slow roasting. I once went to a church where I was speaking at a conference and they had brisket. And it was some of the best meat that I've ever tasted in my entire life. But one of the processes by which they cooked it was that this guy got up at 2 o'clock in the morning and he started slow roasting it and slow roasted it over the course of something like 18 hours. That meat was absolutely fantastic. There's no way you're going to produce something like that out of a microwave. So you got to get rid of the microwave mentality of culture and think more in terms of slow roasting, or insert whatever kind of long process you wish. Don't assume that your best years are your earliest years, but rather assume that you're going to hit your stride in your 60s. You think, whoa, wait a minute. No, that's retirement age. And I say, no. Think that you're going to hit your stride in your 60s. Don't rush to publish, to tweet, to blog, or to podcast, because you may regret it. Because in all truth, here's something that somebody may never tell you, hopefully others do. Your worst work will be your first work. Your worst work will be your earliest work. And the internet has a hard time forgetting. There literally have been people that have sued Google in the efforts to get Google to forget them because they cannot be forgotten. They cannot eliminate old information that was once available, that they once put up, and now is just permanently stuck out there in the internet. Now, why is our theology, the first theology that we do, usually our worst? Well, theology, remember, isn't, again, just a study of knowledge, but it's ultimately faith-seeking understanding. It's the quest to learn the wisdom of Christ, not to download data, but to learn how to love our infinite triune God. And so when we look to God, we realize that we lack wisdom, virtue, goodness, righteousness, which are all in God alone. Once we realize this, that's when we can begin to fear the Lord. And so taming our hearts, growing in humility, learning Christ's wisdom, plain and simply takes time. It shouldn't surprise us that in the Bible we find great amount of time wedded with wisdom. Job says, "Wisdom is with the aged, and the understanding in length of days." Again in the book of Job, "Let days speak, and many years teach wisdom." Solomon similarly writes of maturity and wisdom when he says in Proverbs, "The glory of young men is their strength, but the splendor of old men is in their gray hair." And likewise ask, why is it that Paul exhorts the older women and the older women and the older men to disciple and to teach the younger men and the younger women? It's because they have wisdom, they have experience. It's not just about knowledge. And so what this means is wisdom takes time. And if theology is ultimately a sapiential labor, a wisdom, an exercise in wisdom, then it too takes time. But don't lose heart. Don't lose heart because you think, oh my goodness, I can't believe you just said that hitting my stride in my 60s, that's going to take forever. Well, let me try to inspire you with some examples. In a recent interview for, let's see, what periodical was this? In Esquire, Clint Eastwood was interviewed along with his son. And the journalist asked, after you won your first Oscar in 1992 for Unforgiven, you were 63 years old. At that point, do you think you were you could now kind of rest, and because you'd hit the pinnacle? And Eastwood's response is revealing. He says, I put it into third gear at that point. In other words, Eastwood had spent years, decades even, playing in spaghetti westerns, but deep down in his gut, he knew that if he stayed with the western genre, it would pay off. He says it was a great story. And so what this means is that for decades, he labored as if he was still accelerating well into his 60s. He's in second gear into his 60s. And finally, when he wins the Oscar, then he puts it into third gear. So since his first Oscar win at 63, Eastwood has been nominated for 8 more Oscars, and he's won 3. There are other similar examples. Since turning 80 years old, noted economist Thomas Sowell has published 7 books. Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State in the Nixon administration, has published his most recent book at the age of 91. And if we take a look around, you can see that there are a lot of influential people who are still honing their craft long past the so-called retirement age. AC/DC frontman Brian Johnson, 73 years old, still playing to massive crowds. You could say that about the whole AC/DC band. Yes, maybe you elicit some jokes. It's no longer the Rolling Stones, it's the Rolling Bones. But nevertheless, they're still out there playing. Rock singer Sammy Hagar, the Red Rocker, 73 years old. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, 81. Maxine Waters, Congresswoman, 81. Ignore false timetables and prepare and plan for the long game.